Total Screen proudly presents their official podcast, OnScreen, with your hosts, Tyson Gifford and William Rohrig.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to OnScreen, the official podcast of the Total Screen. My name is Tyson.
My name is Will.
And today we are going to be talking about The Crow, as promised from last week. We also have some trailers to go over in our On Beat section, and some things to look forward to in the horizon, and that's where we're going to start today with our On the Horizon segment.
On the horizon.
On the Horizon, as I said, is where we talk about what's coming up in the next week or so. And we're going to be starting things off with Ripley, which is coming on Thursday, April 4th to Netflix. No, this is not the Alien TV series that we talked about
I thought it was
before.
Ripley's Believe It or Not.
It isn't that either. It is.
Okay.
Ripley is the talented Mr. Ripley, but in TV show form.
Oh, that's right.
Starring Moriarty from the Sherlock series.
I forgot about that.
Oh, we talked about the trailer, I think.
Yeah, we covered the trailer. I think we did.
We either covered it or we talked about covering it.
Yeah.
Star Trek Discovery is coming back on Thursday, April 4th to Paramount Plus. Alex Rider is returning for its third season on Friday, April 5th on Amazon's Freevee service. That's their free but ad-supported streaming service. But I guess like all of Amazon Prime is ad-supported now, so I guess this is the free ad-supported one only. But Alex Rider it's a decent show, like you wouldn't think it is. It looks like the movies were like a kid's spy movie or something, but they kind of made it more like teenage, more mature, and like it's kind of storytelling and stuff in the series. So it's pretty decent. Parasyte the Grey, which is the movie adaptation of the Parasyte manga series, is coming on Friday, April 5th to Netflix as well. Sugar, which is a gender-bending detective series featuring Colin Farrell. That's all I know about it. That's the description. I'm like, okay, what does that mean? Is coming on Friday, April 5th to Apple TV Plus. And Monkey Man, which we have discussed the trailer for before, is coming on Friday, April 5th to theaters. That is what's coming up in the next week, but now let's move on to On Beat. On Beat is our news segment. And before we get to the three trailers we're discussing this week, we got a little piece of news just recently, and that is that Child's Play is going to be getting another movie. So as our resident Child's Play fanatic, are you excited for this news?
I mean, sure. If it's good, I'll watch it.
It's still Don Mancini, so it should still have his style to it.
It's always going to be Don Mancini.
Yeah. A movie while they have the series going on. They're still airing the third season, aren't they, for the series?
Yeah, the second part of the third season is about to drop, if it hasn't already. I'm not sure the date on that. But yeah, that's still going on. No real information about a fourth season yet, or what's happening.
3 seasons in a movie.
Yes.
After like 7 other movies.
Yeah, exactly. 7 movies, 3 seasons in a movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah, interesting news. And now our trailers. First off, we got 2 trailers for House of the Dragon, which divided up the trailers as like, you had kind of a Team Black and Team Green.
Yeah. Pokemon Black and Pokemon Green.
Yeah, what if they did the series like that? It was literally like 2 separate series and you had to watch it to interact them.
Yeah, exactly. To understand the entire story.
You had to like trade characters with the person watching another series.
Yeah.
So, what team are you on? Are you Team Black or Team Green?
I'm Team Black. Green is my favorite color, but Team Green is like all like a-holes.
Yeah,
so
I'm Team Black too.
Yeah, I'm Team Black.
Fuck Team Green.
Yes.
And they're incel night.
And they're incel night, yeah. And freaking Alicent. I saw like a tweet the other day that like was very like, yeah, the king, like, dragged his dying, decaying butt onto the throne just so he could reaffirm what he's held since the beginning, that Rhaenyra is his true heir. And then Alicent is like, oh, he took it back on his deathbed because, like, she misheard him or understood him.
He mumbled something in his sleep about Aegon, and even though there's like a gazillion Aegon Targaryens.
Yeah.
he just took that to mean, like, her son Aegon.
Yeah. And
Ridiculous.
now there's a war, so no,
yeah.
I'm Team Black.
Yeah, Team Black all the way.
Yeah.
I hope for some comeuppance for all the shit that they did last season.
Yes.
I really want that. Is it Tristan? Is that the name of the guy, the fucking incel guy?
I think so. Yes.
I really want him to get some severe punishment.
Yes.
But yeah, the trailers look cool. I like that they're just completely different trailers. They weren't just like, didn't have like a slight difference, just completely different story arcs and stuff, but with the same kind of format and structure to them. And yeah, it's really cool.
Really cool marketing. I mean, I'm there day one.
Yeah. Then we got a trailer for Humane, which is a new movie starring Veronica Mars' dad.
Yeah.
Interesting concept here. You have this, basically, the idea is that people there's like a required voluntary suicide kind of thing. And you call up to volunteer and then you'll basically be killed. And this guy and his wife call up and they're like gonna have a party with their family to talk about the fact that they're going to, do this and say goodbye to everybody. And then the people show up to kill them, and one of them apparently backs out. I guess that's what's happening based on what we saw in the trailer.
One of them like took off, so they're not there when they arrive. That person's not there.
And so they're like, okay, so the one other person gets put down, and they're like, oh, okay, well, you guys are going to take the body now or something. And they're like, oh, no, you don't understand. We're here for 2 bodies.
Yeah, we're here for 2 people. We're called for 2 people, so we're going to take 2 people.
Yeah.
And then this leads to, like, everybody, the rest of that family fighting amongst each other, trying not to be like it, right?
Yeah. Like I said to you earlier before we started this podcast, is that it really gave me Ready or Not vibes, which was the movie that, from the people that are doing the current Scream movies, like the last 2 Scream movies that came out, they did a movie called Ready or Not, and it was about this bride marrying into this wealthy family, and before she could marry in, they had to play this game, and it was like they were hunting her, basically. And it just kind of has very similar vibes to that, like from what I'm seeing in this trailer, which is cool because I really liked Ready or Not, so. And then the last trailer we got was Unfrosted, the story of Kellogg's and Post competing over breakfast pastries. Shelf-ready breakfast pastries is the origin story of Pop-Tarts, in a sense.
Okay, so right off the bat, I didn't know like too much about this other than Jerry Seinfeld was involved. I thought this was going to be, like one of those corporate documentaries they do. This looks like it's taking like a walk hard. It looks like they're doing a spoof of the recent spate of corporate documentaries.
This is the weird that Al Yankovic story of Pop-Tart movies.
Yeah. This is actually, the first, film, this is the first thing Jerry Seinfeld's directed. This is his directorial debut.
Yeah, it looks like he's got a pretty good cast too. I saw a lot of cameos. I'm interested
Bill
in
Burr
checking out.
JFK was amazing.
It'd be interesting to go back and look through it really quickly at all the cameos and see, because I saw a lot of familiar faces and I'm just not recalling them now because I didn't really commit them down, but there's a lot of stuff with different fast food, or not fast food, but like, I guess, store food mascots and stuff, in there.
Yeah.
And all sorts of other stuff going on. Looks like a great cast. Looks like a really funny movie.
Oh yeah, looks great. Yeah, it looks hilarious. It looks like it's gonna be like really zany and out there.
Yeah, it looks like it's gonna be fun, and it's good to see Jerry Seinfeld back doing something again.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Was that like Jim Gaffigan as like the Quaker Oats guy?
Yeah.
Or something? Yeah.
Yeah, that was funny. Yeah, there's just a bunch of cameos. I gotta like check it out again. I think there are probably a lot of stand-up comedians and stuff that show up in this. He probably called upon a lot of his friends to go in this, which is gonna make it pretty funny to watch.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That is it for our On Beat segment, and that leaves only full spoilers. This week we are talking about a movie that just came out 30 years ago, and that is The Crow, which debuted in 1994. 30 years ago.
30 years ago. Yeah, crazy.
30
crazy
years
to
old.
think of that. It's been 30 years, and
we talked about the trailer for The Crow last week, and Will said he had never seen The Crow, and I'm like, well, we have to right this wrong.
Not the original. Yeah.
We have to right this wrong right away. So this is the original Crow movie. It was directed by Alex Proyas, who hasn't really done too terribly much else. He did this and Dark City. Those are the two like really big movies that are
and I did see Dark City, and Dark City is an excellent movie.
Yeah. So Dark City came out after The Crow. I remember being excited for it because it was from the director of The Crow, and he really wasn't doing anything else, you know? So that was really cool.
And that was also very dark, very interesting film.
Yeah, it was like just a cool like visual style and stuff, yeah.
Apparently he directed I, Robot with Will Smith, which I didn't know.
Oh, that's right. He did direct I, Robot. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I've seen his name around anywhere, so I forgot about that, but yeah.
Looks like the last like big movie he directed. He did Knowing with Nicolas Cage. Apparently that was him too.
Yeah, that's not as great of a movie.
No. Knowing and then Gods of Egypt.
Yeah, he's slipped downhill a little bit there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this was written by David G. Shao, who did Critters 3, as well as John Shirley, who has a writing credit from The Real Ghostbusters.
Nice.
And it's based on the graphic novel by James O'Barr, who I mentioned last week when we talked about the trailer. Yeah, James O'Barr's girlfriend, who was basically had like a really bad life, and he had a girlfriend kind of turned his whole life around, and then she died because of a drunk driver. And in order to deal with that trauma, James O'Barr wrote The Crow as a graphic novel. And since then, he's made like various other versions of The Crow following different characters, and there've been various movies. There was like a TV series of The Crow. There's been a few different things like that. And we have a new remake that's going to be coming out soon that's following up on the same character from the original Crow, the character of Eric. And here in this movie, in the original, that was played by Brandon Lee, who unfortunately passed away. It's very similar to the Rust shooting, the Alec Baldwin Rust shooting, in that should have been a blank. I think in the Rust shooting there was a real bullet in the gun. In this one, what happened was they had made their own like blanks and dud bullets. Mm-hmm. And when they put one of the dud bullets in, it was a real bullet that they had taken apart and poured the gunpowder out of. But bullets still have kind of a blasting cap on the back. So when they were like testing the shots on the gun, they were testing the duds. It hit the black blasting cap, and it wasn't enough to shoot the bullet, but it was enough to lodge the bullet into the barrel of the gun. And then when they used a real blank, a full like scale blank, it basically turned the gun into a giant bullet.
Oh wow, that's crazy.
And shot the end from the dud bullet into Brandon Lee, and that's what ended up killing him.
Yeah.
And so they finished this movie after he died.
Yeah, I mean.
And yeah.
That goes without saying.
He died. They'd filmed most of it. And apparently the scene where he was killed was the scene where, the character of, I believe it was Fun Boy is his name. He's the one that was like sleeping with the little girl's mom. And
was that the scene?
That's the scene.
Where that happened? I kind of figured when I was watching it, although I was trying not to, like, try to pick that out, because I'm like, no, I'm just gonna put that entire thing out of my head viewing this.
It's better to do that when you're watching it, when you're getting your first viewing of it, but it's just kind of interesting story.
I was kind of like, I'm just gonna watch the movie, I'm not gonna, like, think about, like, what happened. Like, I know what happened. Like, it was major news when it happened.
Huge tragedy. And,
huge tragedy. So I was kind of like, I'm not gonna like sit here and like watch it and think about it, like try to pick out this is the scene where it happened. But it kind of like seemed like the Fun Boy scene.
Yeah, and it's really sad because you feel bad for, Brandon Lee's had a fiance at the time, he's part of the Lee family, Bruce Lee's son. Bruce Lee of course had passed away already at a young age, but his mom and sister had to deal with like another tragic young death in their family.
Yeah.
But then on top of that, the guy who shot him, Fun Boy, like, it just ruined his life.
Right.
That
I
actor
can
just
imagine.
had, like, was torn up by that. Like, it talked about it. He ended up, passing away at not as young of an age, but still a fairly young age. And, just, never recovered from it, apparently. That's the kind of what the story is about, what everything that happened here. And they really kind of came together and finished the film so that they could put it out, and have it stand as like a legacy for Brandon Lee, which it really does, because Brandon Lee had a very short film career before this. This was going to be his breakout role, basically.
Right, yeah.
This was the role that was going to kind of make him famous and on his own terms rather than just as like Bruce Lee's son. And I remember I was already a Brandon Lee fan. He had a movie, I believe it was called Showdown in Little Tokyo with Dolph Lundgren, that I really liked when I was like, in junior high school age. I was like really into that movie. And when I found out about The Crow, I didn't know anything about the comic at the time. And I heard like Brandon Lee was going to be playing this like comic book character. And I was like over the moon. I'm like, oh, this is going to be so fucking cool. And I was so into it. And then the tragic news came out and it was just like a monumental moment in movie history. And it's kind of resurfaced in the news because of the Rush shooting and how that kind of is similar and how that similarly played out. But I think that the movie on its own kind of deserves its own attention. And so that's what we're going to be talking about for the remainder of this segment. So,
yeah, exactly.
As somebody who'd never seen The Crow before, but you were culturally aware of The Crow. You knew about it. You'd seen the costume, the Halloween costumes.
I knew the costume.
The makeup, the famous face makeup.
Also, I knew it was based off a comic. I knew, like, the comic existed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was aware. I just never watched the movie.
Yeah. So you have like you're aware of like the effect within the cultural zeitgeist, but this is your first time actually seeing the movie.
Yes.
So what did you think, just in broad terms?
I thought it was good, interesting. It's not really an action movie, which kind of surprised me. I thought there would like be more action in it.
Yeah, it's more of a drama. It's more
especially like when casting somebody like Brandon Lee, you would think like, oh yeah, obviously they got him for these elaborate action sequences, but the action sequences actually aren't that elaborate. There's not a lot of elaborate fighting in this movie.
Yeah, there's like one really cool big gunfight scene.
Yeah.
And then there's a few other kind of combat scenes that are like, okay, they're pretty good and stuff. But the real story is more about, it's more about like the setting and the look of the aesthetics and the story and the drama of that.
Yeah, the setting is like the biggest crap hole city like you've ever seen. Like where like everything is dingy and dirty.
It's like Gotham if like the Batman lived long enough just to escalate the situation and then he died. And then like 10 years later, this would be Gotham,
Right, yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. The movie follows the character of Eric Draven, who he and his girlfriend were killed by a gang on Devil's Night, which is the night before Halloween. And a bunch of fires traditionally would be set and buildings would be burned down on this day under the leadership of a drug kingpin named Top Dollar. And he had a gang of people, and Shelley and Eric, the couple that were murdered, like started, they got in the way of business. And so the gang came after him, killed them both. And as a result, a great injustice was made, and a crow, instead of carrying the soul on to his next life and the afterlife or whatever, carried him back to get revenge. And that's kind of where the movie is. It's about him one by one going down his list of the people that killed him and his fiancée, like the day before they were supposed to be married.
And getting revenge.
Yeah. Getting revenge.
It's a story of revenge. What's interesting to me, like, is it doesn't open on Eric Draven or even like what happened. Like it opens like on the aftermath, and the point of view character is the beat cop, which is Ernie Hudson. Which, by the way, Ernie Hudson, man, I love seeing him. He does not pop up often, unfortunately.
He's still wearing his hat.
Yeah, he's still wearing his hat. Still looks great. If you've seen the promotional for Ghostbusters Afterlife, still looks great. I was real happy to see Ernie Hudson, and he's our first POV character in this movie, which I thought was an interesting choice because they're showing like the aftermath, and they're not really showing like anybody like related to that And it's interesting, instead of like diving into like starting on like Eric and his fiance and like their happy life, and then the violence happens, and then he dies, and then we don't open on that at all.
Yeah.
Which I thought was an interesting choice.
Yeah, we start it's going through the city, and you see Eric dead on the street, having fallen out of a window and having been killed. And then they're pulling out Shelley, who's dying and not dead yet at the time.
Yeah.
And Ernie Hudson's character kind of lies to her that Eric's okay or something, and then she goes off to the hospital and she dies too.
Yeah, and there's a young girl that they befriended.
Kind of quasi-adopted her.
Yeah, quasi-adopted.
This young girl from a bad situation. It's a very, I guess if you were to compare it to a real city right now, it'd be like Detroit, I guess.
Yeah.
Like very run-down, crime-riddled city.
But it's interesting because, you're not introduced to Eric really until he comes out of the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He pulls himself out of the ground like the bride in Kill Bill.
Yeah.
He pulls himself out, and then he kind of goes through what feels like a very painful realization process of coming to grips with the fact that he's back alive, re-remembering everything that happened to him and his fiancée. It's all coming back to him as these flashbacks that are kind of jabs, like knife jabs almost.
Yeah, you get the backstory through these psychedelic blink and you miss it flashbacks with no dialogue.
That just look painful,
Yeah.
And like I said, they're almost done like stabs. Each flashback hits him like a stab wound.
Yes.
As he's kind of making his way back, and then
it's like psychic torture.
Yeah. And then he puts his makeup on and he sets out for the task.
Yeah, pretty much.
And we have an assorted number of baddies here that, they're all a different group of baddies that he has to track down and kill in different and fun and unique ways. And you get interpersonal character relationships because, we talk about the little girl that they kind of quasi-adopted. Well, you meet her mom, who is the reason they had to kind of quasi-adopt her because her mom's just a junkie and sleeping around with one of the killers.
Yeah, Boy Toy, I think that's his nickname.
Yeah, or Fun Boy.
Fun Boy, that's it. Fun Boy.
Who is, as I said, before, I mentioned him. But, that's kind of where the movie goes through. It goes through each of these, starts off with Tintin. That's the first one he kills. And Tintin is this guy who uses knives. A funny story I can tell about this is that I was big time into The Crow when I was in high school, and a friend of mine and I were both really into it. And back in the day, they don't do this as much anymore, and they don't do it as badly anymore. But do you remember they would always play R-rated movies on syndicated channels, and they would censor them to shit?
Yeah, I remember.
And change all the dialogue. They did that with The Crow. So they aired The Crow on our channel was KTLA, which is now would be the CW. But that this is pre-CW days.
Right, yeah.
Pre-WB days even, I think.
Oh, yeah, no, because when The Crow came out, there was no UPN, WB, CW. That whole set.
None of that stuff had started yet. And the channel the local channel where I live that ended up being the affiliate network for the WB and then eventually the CW was KTLA. That's in Los Angeles. That's the Los Angeles channel for it. And they aired this Crow censored version movie. And my friend and I will still quote lines from censored lines from that airing. Because we watched it afterwards and cracked up. I watched it. I was watching it and then I said, I called up my friend and said, it's re-airing. You gotta watch it when it re-airs. And we watched it together, on the phone. He was watching his house, I was watching mine, and we were on the phone, cracking up and talking through it as it was going. And the scene we remember the most is where Tintin, where he's going after Tintin and he's trying to get Tintin to acknowledge what he did and to tell him Shelley's name and to do all that stuff. And Tintin seems to at one point get the better of Eric. And he's oh yeah, I knew that, some dumb bitch or something like that. He's but he's all it was fun and easy. And then he says something about he raped her and it was, it was good or something like that. And when they censored it, he said it went to I kissed her real good. She loved it. And it was such a stupid line. And it's become one of our most favorite quotable lines of anything between me and my friend is this. Every so often, still to this day, I'll be talking to him and one of us will say, I kissed her real good and she loved it. So that's kind of my funny anecdote about this scene in particular. But
yeah, I never watched. I never watched like a lot of like R-rated movies on syndication just because the censorship and also
yeah, you don't really want to unless it's funny.
and also like commercial breaks. You know, like I
Yeah.
was always like movies should not have commercial breaks.
Yeah.
That's me.
Yeah, especially like dramas. Like comedies, you can kind of get away with it, but dramas, like commercial breaks kind of kill them. But, but yeah, like, so that scene is very memorable to me for it. But there's just the cool knife catch scene. Where he's throwing the knives at him and he dodges one and he like knocks another one away with his hand.
He's taunting him too. He's like, oh yeah, try again. And he's like, you gotta try harder than that, you know?
And then the last one he catches between his hands.
Yes.
And then throws back at him.
and then again, like, it's also interesting too. This is not, like, there's violence and stuff, there's blood, but this isn't like a gory movie, like, because when he goes to kill him with the knives, like, it shows him going and it cuts.
Yeah.
And you only ever see the aftermath.
Victims, aren't we all?
Yeah, victims, aren't we all? And then it cuts, and yeah, it doesn't actually show him killing him.
Mm-hmm.
Which I thought, oh, okay, well, like, for an R-rated movie was interesting, because, like, these days, I mean, I'm sure the remake they're doing, that probably has, like, a bunch of, like, graphic kills in it.
Oh, yeah, it's gonna be very John Wick.
Yeah.
Then we get a scene where Eric is going after the pawn shop owner that Tintin had sold the ring to.
Yeah, because he wants the ring.
Yeah, he wants the ring back, and this guy deserves a little bit of punishment, at least, for knowing what was going on.
And that's where we have, like, Eric drop the Edgar Allan Poe quote.
Yeah. There's lots of the movie is so of its time.
Yeah.
It's great. It's a cult classic. I love it still, but it's so of its time. It's so 90s, and it's got that poetic killer aspect to it, he's a killer, but he's sensitive and he's poetic and he'll
this
quote
movie,
poetry and stuff.
This movie is so goth it hurts, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's totally goth. It's let's
now you see what I meant when I was talking about how the music in the trailer for the remake was annoying me. They just missed the mark,
Yeah, it's this dude with white and black face painted up like a mime, wearing black leather, and he's a sensitive musician, and he quotes Poe. That's the entire goth movement.
Yeah, this movie was a gold mine for Hot Topic.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
When this movie came out, Hot Topic was oh, thank God.
Yeah.
This movie made Hot Topic, man, I swear. But fantastic soundtrack too. Speaking of all that, just amazing soundtrack. 9 Inch Nails, Stone Temple Pilots.
Oh yeah.
Violent
Femmes
Femmes
the soundtrack
on there.
Yeah,
My Life with a Thrill Kill Call.
That's
awesome.
The soundtrack for the movie, not whatever they're going for in the remake trailer.
Yeah, not that auto-tuned hip hop,
Yeah, exactly.
There's not much music in this vein anymore, though, So
no, there isn't.
I don't know what they would do. They'd have to go really, really super underground for the music if they wanted to kind of recapture this vein, or they just use Billie Eilish or something.
Unfortunately, rock, isn't as mainstream as it was back in the 90s.
Yeah.
Anymore. So it's kind of
The kind of one mainstream angle that they could have took that might have made sense would have been maybe something like Billie Eilish and stuff like that, the pop stuff that kind of has that same kind of almost goth sensibilities,
Yeah, exactly.
Hot Topic pop, I'll call it. But yeah, it's definitely, like I said, the movie's so of its time. The soundtrack is so of its, the whole thing. Oh yeah, there's a song by Helmet in there too. Yeah, Helmet's awesome. Anyways, yeah, great soundtrack. The soundtrack alone is worth checking out. But yeah, we get the scene. He quotes the Edgar Allan Poe at the pawn shop owner, and he shoots a shotgun shell to blow up a building that's filled with leaking gas with a shotgun that's stuffed with all the wedding rings of all these people that have been killed.
Yeah, exactly. Which is really cool.
Just cool poetic shot, big firebomb explosion. Awesome. He lets the guy live, but just barely. As all of this is going on, you start to meet the real villain of the story, who Eric isn't even aware of. Eric doesn't even know this guy exists. But he's the guy that kind of pulls the string on all the crime in the city. And this is Top Dollar. He's kind of the leader of the gang, and he's played by Michael Wincott, who has one of the best voices in Hollywood. Just a very gravelly, like evil-sounding voice. He voiced Death in Darksiders 2 as well.
Oh, okay, interesting.
So if you ever played that, that's Michael Wincott. That's the villain from The Crow, as I knew him.
He plays like this real like psycho bastard.
He's got this weird relationship with who he calls his sister. I guess it's like maybe his adopted sister or something.
I don't know. They don't go into that, and probably good because
it's a creepy relationship.
he makes out with her like near the end of the movie anyway. So it's kind of like, that's his sister. We got some incest happening.
Him and his sister, who's played by Ling.
Yes.
They have this creepy relationship. She's kind of a little witchy. She's into like kind of mysticism. Our introduction to Top Dollar is him laying in bed with a woman. He pulls the woman over and finds out she's dead.
Yeah.
And he's like, honey, we broke her. Yeah. And then his sister, whatever she is, if she's related by blood or not, played by Bai Ling, then proceeds to start to cut her eyes out. We don't see that, but that's where it's going. She's fascinated with eyes, and she's going to cut this girl's eyes out. And so this is like, okay, now we know who the real big bad is of this movie. And he has his number one, his top lieutenant. The gang are all kind of a bunch of dipshits, basically, the ones that killed Eric. But he has a number one who's played by Tony Todd of Candyman. And who also voiced, I think he voiced one of the villains in the Flash series. I think it was Zoom, wasn't it?
Tony Todd was Zoom. Yeah, I saw Tony Todd and I was like, oh man, yeah. This movie has like a lot of cool actors in it. Like
small role. He has a very small role in this.
Yeah, small role, but man, he even in like the role like that small, like he was still like imposing.
Yeah. The next killing we get, I think, is T-Bird. T-Bird's the guy he's the wheelman kind of the group. It was either T-Bird or Funboy next.
No, it was Funboy next.
Okay, so it was Funboy
after that, yeah.
Already mentioned the kind of tragedy of this, the real life tragedy of this scene, so we won't step back on that, but Funboy, and then, he's in bed with Darla, who is the young girl whose name is Sarah. It's her mom, and he's in bed with her when Eric pays a visit. Mm-hmm. And Eric kills him with a great joke. I love the joke. Me and my friend used to also quote this joke back and forth to each other. Jesus hands the innkeeper 3 nails and says, "Can you put me up for the night?" And then proceeds to murder Funboy with a bunch of syringes. What's interesting here is that after that, he starts going after Darla. Not to kill her, but to literally take the poison out of her so that she can be a better mother to Sarah. Which was kind of like a weird turn, you know? Like that's showing how this is less of a just straight up action movie and more like a drama and stuff. That it's focusing on the character dynamics.
Yeah.
That he like basically turns Darla into an attempted good mother at least.
Yeah.
Says, and again with another poetic quote of, mother is the name of God on the lips of children or something like that.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, so then there's that. We get the T-Bird scene. He's the kind of the wheelman of the group and kind of the de facto leader of the actual gang, that killed Eric.
Played by David Patrick Kelly, who's known for playing Jerry Horn on Twin Peaks.
Mm-hmm.
And also Twin Peaks The Return.
Yeah, this is after Twin Peaks.
Yes.
Before Twin Peaks Returns, but after Twin Peaks.
Yeah, after Twin Peaks. Apparently he was in John Wick Chapter 2.
Yeah, I believe so. I'm having trouble placing him, but I think I remember that being the case. But yeah, T-Bird, he gets taken out with a big fiery explosion that led to one of the cool shots from the trailer, which was Eric lighting a gasoline crow on fire on the ground. A giant crow symbol.
I remember that was the key image for the film and the promotional marketing was the fire crow. That was the key image for the movie.
Mm-hmm. And then the last one of this gang that he kills is Skank, who's kind of the village idiot of the group.
Yeah.
He's just a complete dumb shit. And this is less about killing him, and it's more about this massive action scene. This is when he first meets Top Dollar, because Top Dollar is protecting, I guess, in quotation marks, Skank. And not really. He's just trying to lure out the guy.
Yeah, he's using Skank as bait to lure out the guy who's been killing his henchmen, you know, and it works because he takes Skank and he brings him to this meeting. And yeah, and Eric finds Top Dollar, from following Skank, searching him out.
Yeah, and Top Dollar has basically his entire gang shoot Eric down.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, that was easy. But no, because he wasn't taking seriously that this was a supernatural situation, despite warnings from Tony Todd's character, and, despite the mysticism of his sister and all of those aspects and the other things he was hearing. He just thought Eric was just some guy that they had failed to kill.
And by the way, the fact that they can't kill Eric with like a million bullets doesn't seem to faze Top Dollar a bit.
Yeah.
That's how like nuts this guy is.
Yeah, this is where we get a really cool scene. It's set to the music of a band called there's an industrial band called My Life with a Thrill Kill Cult, and they did a song on this, and they're playing in the club below as they're like up above, like this meeting's happening above this dance club, and then beneath them, My Life with a Thrill Kill Cult is playing in this place. Then the music bleeds over and becomes like the soundtrack for the action scene as Eric is just wiping out the entire fucking crew.
Yes.
Shot him down. First, just guns, whatever he can find on him. He's killing people, taking their guns. Then there's like a giant sword cabinet that Top Dollar has. Pulls out a sword from there and just starts slicing up too. Awesome scene. Great action scene.
One of the biggest action set pieces in the film.
Yeah, well, the biggest, I think.
Yeah, I think it's the biggest.
Yeah, and it ends with him killing Skank. I love the scene. It's Skank's like, oh, I'm not Skank. Skank there. Skank dead. And he's like, that's right. Throws him out the window.
That throws him out the window,
Right onto a police car. But yeah, this kicks off Top Dollar really targeting Eric now because his mystic sister says that he has power from this crow, and Top Dollar now understands this.
She figures it out,
She figures out if he has power, then that power can be taken.
Yeah.
And so
well, she
now
figures out that the crow is the source of his power.
Yeah. And so now they hatch a plan to go after him. Of course, Eric at this point, he's already killed everybody that killed him and his fiancée. So he's heading back to the grave. He's ready to just die and be with his fiancée again. But unfortunately, his friend Sarah, the little girl, is kidnapped.
Yeah.
And now he has to come back for her. And now it's Eric, who's quickly joined by the police officer that Ernie Hudson plays, joins him to retrieve Sarah and start up the last action scene. And the results of that is that first, the sister, Myleen's character, gets her eyes pecked out by the crow.
Yeah.
They shoot the crow, they wound it, and then she's trying to get it.
They wound the crow, which makes Eric vulnerable because, like, he gets shot and it sticks, it doesn't heal.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, there's this great moment between Eric and Ernie Hudson's character where he's like, "Oh, can't you just go up there? I thought you were invincible." And Eric says something like, "Apparently not anymore."
Yeah. Or he said something like that, or like, so did I, or something.
Yeah.
And, then he comes after, Ernie Hudson's character gets wounded, and Eric has to move on, and Eric ends up fighting Top Dollar on the roof, like basically a sword fight. It's sword versus antenna.
It's funny because,
or lightning rod,
Top Dollar has his katana, which he's been carrying around with him the entire movie, but Eric has nothing. Eric, he's hand to hand, and so, he grabs this lightning rod off the roof, just rips it out, off of, where it's bolted down, and uses that as a sword to sword fight.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
But the way he ends up taking down Top Dollar is another one of his abilities. So apparently the crow's abilities are that he is invincible when it's tethered to the crow, that he's got some kind of like enhanced agility and strength of some kind, but not to like an excessive level. He's can force drugs out of someone's system, which is weird.
Yeah.
But then the weirdest ability is he's able to redirect the pain that he and his fiancée experienced back to somebody. And that's how he ends up taking out Top Dollar, is he basically gives him all of the pain that Shelley felt as she was dying.
Well, there's the key, though. He because there's a scene earlier where he's at the cop's apartment, and he gets those, like, because he sat with Shelley in the hospital until she died, Ernie Hudson's character. he's able to give those memories of that to Eric. Like, he touches Eric, and Eric gets flooded with those memories, which causes Eric great distress. But then those specific memories are what Eric uses to incapacitate Top Dollar.
Yeah, and it stuns him, and then Top Dollar falls off the roof and on top of a gargoyle, and we see his blood come out of the gargoyle's mouth.
And after Top Dollar's dead, like, he fakes the guy. He said, "Oh, it's because of what you gave me that I was able to win."
Yeah. And then Eric basically collapses on the grave and is visited by Shelley, who kind of takes the role of the Crow of returning him to the afterlife.
Yeah, which is really nice ending there. Yeah, I thought it was
kind of reminds
movie.
Me a little bit of the end of John Wick, where like he's kind of on the ground bleeding and looking at his girlfriend one last time on the phone, and it's almost like he's gonna die, and then he decides not to.
Yeah,
he's gonna get up and shake it off or whatever. It's kind of similar in vein to like that. I think it's a great movie. It's of its time for sure. It's very 90s. It's very, goth. It really kind of spearheaded a lot of the, it didn't create, but it really drove a lot of the 90s goth stuff. Kind of came out of The Crow, like after The Crow, that's when like Nine Inch Nails like really blew up. Like they were around before, but they really blew up like after The Crow. And Marilyn Manson debuted like after The Crow. All the kind of really that era of goth stuff from like the 90s, which of course goth goes back way further than that to the Cure and all those bands like that, but it really like re-exploded goth into like 90s culture and made it like a big part of 90s culture. You start getting people wearing trench coats everywhere and like all that kind of stuff. A lot of that derives from like The Crow and the kind of mood and feelings that were generated by that.
Did you watch any of the sequels, like City of Angels or Salvation?
I saw City of Angels, I believe. I think that was the first sequel. That's the only one I saw, and I saw a few random episodes of the TV series.
Oh, yeah, the TV series.
That was with Mark Dukakis, I think?
Yeah, that was with him as like
Iron Chef America.
As Eric Draven in the series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the series was typical. It was like, there were a ton of syndicated shows just like that, basically.
Yeah.
Like Renegade and like the one I really liked, Highlander, was kind of in that same, like vein.
Yeah, well, yeah. Oh, yeah. And the Highlander show was really good too.
Yeah. But there were a bunch of shows like that. The Crow one in particular wasn't that great.
Apparently, Kirsten Dunst was in the third Crow movie, apparently.
Yeah.
Oh, and the fourth, The Wicked Prayer, which came out in 2005, that apparently had Edward Furlong, David Boreanaz, Dennis Hopper, Tara Reid.
Yeah, kind of like that was a weird movie. Like I didn't see that one, but like David Boreanaz was kind of like trying to break out after Angel and stuff, I think.
Yes.
Edward Furlong was like long since a has-been.
Yes.
That was like his attempt to like come back or something. And yeah, like weird movie, like for having a cast that big, like.
Yeah, definitely a weird movie
I saw the only other one I actually fully saw like in theaters was the second one, which I hated. That one had Iggy Pop in it though, as one of the villains.
Yes.
But yeah, I hated the second movie, but like
and apparently, David Goyer wrote the second movie.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
He would go on to write the Blade films.
Yeah, which themselves kind of borrowed from The Crow,
Oh yeah. Oh, apparently he was also David Goyer is also credited as a writer for Dark City. So I guess Alex Proyas probably. Oh yeah, he was a writer for Dark City.
Mm-hmm.
Batman Begins. Really prolific.
Yeah, he's been attached to a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
He had a TV show called Da Vinci's Demons that was about Leonardo da Vinci making inventions and having adventures.
That's funny.
Yeah, but that's kind of the story of and the legacy of The Crow and kind of what it meant. And yeah, it's very of its time, but it's very good of its time. Like sometimes when you say something's of its time, it's like, that just means that you have to like excuse how shitty it is and just kind of take it as a snapshot of the era. But The Crow is like a good movie, but it's so of its time, it reeks of 90s. It reeks of so much of that, but it also like created a lot of that, I think. Like a lot of the kind of aesthetic of that kind of came from The Crow. So, and of course it borrowed that from like goth culture and stuff as well, but I mean, still a lot of that kind of came more into like mainstream precedents because of The Crow. And, can't say it enough, fantastic soundtrack. One of the best soundtracks ever. And I think The Crow really established like movie soundtracks as like a big thing, because I remember before The Crow came out, every so often you'd get something like, say, Saturday Night Fever, where like the score was like a bunch of Bee Gees songs or something like that. But you really didn't have that many movies that had like a ton of original songs on a soundtrack by like hit artists and stuff. That wasn't really a thing before The Crow, you know? Like you didn't get like, you got it afterwards. After The Crow, there were a bunch of movies that were doing that. I mean, that's why you have like, you know, Kissed by the Rose or whatever from Seal in like Batman Forever or whatever.
Yeah.
Batman and Robin. Whatever.
No, that was Batman Forever. That was definitely Batman Forever.
But that's why you had like that kind of stuff. Like it's an original song by like a hit artist, and it's like a really good song or something like that. That's like, why is this made for a movie soundtrack? Whereas before, I think most it was, you know, movie soundtracks were songs that were already elsewhere. They were already out and about.
It's funny now that you bring it up. I can't think of an equivalent song or soundtrack for Batman and Robin. What the hell did they do? They had Seal for Forever, and then like if there was one, it's forgotten now. I can't remember it.
Well, one of the movies, maybe it was also Batman Forever. There was a U2 one.
Oh yeah, that's right.
In one of them, I'm not sure, but
yeah.
But it's interesting because like you started seeing these big movie soundtracks after The Crow. Like that became a thing because not only was the movie successful, but the soundtrack was phenomenally successful. Like almost everybody I knew, everybody in my friend circle had a copy of the Crow soundtrack. I don't know anybody who buys movie soundtracks now. I mean, buying music is kind of weird in general now.
That's been a thing since the 80s, really.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of movie soundtracks at the time, they were collections of existing songs.
Yeah, but there were
songs. All new songs.
Yeah, that's true. But there were songs specifically written for movies too that became big
yeah,
hits.
But this is a whole soundtrack.
Like Eye of the Tiger for Rocky.
Yeah.
Like a big thing.
Of course, but what I'm saying is that with The Crow, it's the entire soundtrack.
Yeah.
The entire soundtrack was original music.
Yeah.
And so it was like a big thing, and that started like a trend. I remember there was a movie called Judgment Day that came out, like I think in the later 90s. It had like, I think Emilio Estevez in it or something.
Jesus.
And that movie, they did a whole gimmick where they had like rap bands or like rock bands and rock and metal bands as well as rappers teaming up on songs.
Right, yeah.
And so that had a bunch of songs that were like team up songs. And that was a big deal. And then, you know, I think the last thing I remember doing like a big soundtrack like that was like for South Park. And it wasn't for like the South Park movie. It was like for an episode of South Park. They did an episode called, Chef Aid. And they had like a huge original soundtrack. And that's like, I think the last one I remember being like that.
Right.
But it was a big trend like in the late 90s. And that kicked off because of The Crow in 94. So it's just interesting. If you like The Crow, check out the soundtrack. If you like 90s music, check out the soundtrack. Even if the movie sounds completely unappealing to you, if you like 90s music, check out the soundtrack to The Crow. It's fantastic. But that's pretty much it. Anything else to say about The Crow?
No, that's it on my end.
Cool. So next week we are going to be talking about Dream Scenario. This is the most recent Nicolas Cage movie to be on streaming already, I guess. It has another one that's, I think, out or coming out soon. But this is a very interesting movie, and we're going to be talking about that next week. So stay tuned for that. Thank you, everybody, for listening. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. You can follow Will. He is at Voxel Hero. You can check out our website, thetotalscreen.com. If you go to our website and scroll down to any of the podcast container stories for any of the episodes of the podcast, scroll down to the very bottom of that article, and you'll find all of the relevant links to our SoundCloud page, our RSS feed for the podcast. All of our social media links are all there, so check that out. You can also subscribe to this podcast through your favorite podcast client of choice, like Apple Podcast or Pocket Cast, and the entire backlog of our podcast is available on our YouTube channel, as well as other content, including our old podcast, which we did 300 episodes of before we created this podcast. Our old podcast was just TV focused. It was called The Weekly Set. This podcast is OnScreen, focuses on TV, movies, and video games. So we just kind of tried to expand it a little bit when we did this new one. But you can find all of that content on our YouTube channel, and you can find all of the links to all of that in our on our official website, thetotalscreen.com. So check that out. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Good night.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the OnScreen podcast, the official podcast of The Total Screen. Visit our website at thetotalscreen.com. This podcast can be found on any major podcast client, including Pocket Cast and Apple Podcast. The entire backlog of this podcast and other content can be found on our YouTube channel.